I am a poster child for distractions. This is Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. In order to do more of what you want, you have to stop doing the things that take away your time. Your time is the most valuable commodity that you have. Once you spend a minute, a second, an hour, you can never get it back. Now, there are activities you can do that if you invest time in, they'll save you time in the future, meaning reduce the amount of time it takes for you to do something. In today's podcast, I'd like to share with you some ideas and concepts to help you focus on more of what you want to get the outcomes you desire versus being a pawn of these different systems that really monetize your attention. Now, this is important to understand. YouTube, Facebook, all these platforms online monetize your attention. There's even banking platforms that monetize your attention. So, for example, banks used to send statements to your home. Those statements cost them money. Now they can just digitize those statements. They don't actually have to digitize them. Instead of sending a PDF to a print house and then putting it in an envelope and put a stamp on it, they can just show you the PDF. And so now, rather than them having the time and effort necessary to provide you a legally obligated statement, you now have all the time and responsibility of downloading the statement online. Now, when I'm doing bookkeeping, I literally download all the statements because I don't want to give my CPA or my bookkeeper access to all my bank accounts. So I download all these statements, put them in a folder, and then they go through that folder to reconcile, or I go through the folder to reconcile. So instead of having paper statements that could be easily handed off, they could be easily scanned and passed along to the next person, I have to go do all that work myself. So what's happening is a lot of times companies will reduce their costs by putting more work on the customer. Grocery stores, for example, self-checkout lines. It's being pitched to you as saving you time and money. No, it really saves the bank money, or the self-checkout ATMs, the self-checkout in a grocery store is actually saving the business money because they don't have to staff that station and you're doing all the work. And I really, if I do go to the grocery store, which I don't go very often, but if I do go to the grocery store, I want to work with a human who is being paid for the value they're delivering. I don't want to fuddle around with the little self-checkout kiosk thing and have to have somebody come over and tell me what's going on with the damn thing. I want to be able to go up to the counter and have enough people staffed on the checkout line that I can simply have a little conversation, get checked out. That's what it's about. There are companies that are shifting work off onto you rather than you doing it yourself. Investment industry is doing the same thing. Now, when it comes to social media and the internet, I'm in a conflicted role here because as a marketer, as someone who is marketing consulting services and marketing information resources and marketing paid newsletters, I have to go on this system and try to get you engaged long enough that you'll raise your hand and join one of the products or services I have. So I can see on the back end of YouTube, and it talks about watch time. Like in the last 28 days, there's been 158 hours of watch time on on one of these channels that we have here that we use to promote our business. I'm being rewarded for keeping you and other people on the website. So I'm creating more content. I'm trying to create more value. Now, if I left it at that, where I'm just simply trying to suck up your time, I'm not benefiting from that. In fact, the channel, the platform benefits from it, and then they're going to offer you other people's content as well to continue to suck up your time. So let's talk specifically about strategies so that you get more from your time and you have more fulfilling and more eventful days. So first off, you want to be militant about how you control your environment. I have a computer for each purpose. So I have a computer I do bookkeeping on. I have a computer that I do my writing on. I have a computer that I might do reconciliations on or doing research on. It doesn't cost very much. In fact, the computer I'm sitting in front of right now is $250, and the little monitor, I think I got it for free. I don't remember, but it's got 2 screens on it. Having a computer or a place for the thing that you're doing helps you more readily organize materials. So the computer that has to do with bookkeeping has an area where I sort the bills. So within arm's length of where the computer is, I can sort bills. Now I got to do all this stuff online because my QuickBooks is online. My bank accounts are online. So again, creating environments suited for the activity is critical to getting basically spending less time and getting better results. My writing area has basically a computer, and it has a place that I can put a clipboard, or I could put a stack of notes, maybe a stack of index cards, and I can sort through those index cards. It's got a little corkboard on the wall. I can pin the index cards up, and then I can sit there and type. Now, there's nothing else there to be distracted by. There's nothing to play with. There's no work from the rest of the day. It is just for writing. Now, in the case of the laptop, I can actually take the laptop with me if I'm going to go write in another location. Now, do you go write at Starbucks? No. You go write at the library. You go write in a park. You go write someplace where you have limited number of distractions. So engineering your environment allows you to focus on the key and core activity. It's like if you have a woodworking hobby. You don't put that in your living room. You have a shop. You go to the shop and you work. If you are a welder, you don't have the welding in your driveway. You have the welding in a warehouse somewhere where you can spread your materials out and work on the project at hand. Now, in manufacturing and in other areas, this is obvious. You're going to set up an assembly line. What I'm advocating is to reduce distractions is you set up an assembly line. You set up a place to do things. Now, I like entertainment, and so in the background, I like to play music. If you have some kind of background noise or some background environment, you can often use that to block out distractions. However, if you're sitting at Starbucks to write and you have people talking and everything around, that background actually will reduce your efficiency in writing. So you want to look at, if you're doing a physical activity, can you have music in the background? It kind of keeps you motivated, keeps you moving. If you're doing a mental activity, can you have silence in the background? Can you have a space that has no background noises or softer music so that you can keep that voice in your head nice and clear and moving forward? Another thing you want to do is you want to block the activity within a calendar. So if you set on your calendar an hour to do something, it'll most likely take an hour to do. You want to be thinking about that. So when I sit down to write or I sit down to do a podcast, for example, a podcast is 15 minutes. All my podcasts are 15 minutes plus or minus 5 minutes. The reason is because I have an outline, I have a core set of ideas I want to convey, and I sit down and produce them. I don't edit these, as you can tell, and very often I will listen to them in the future and I'll be disappointed with the quality because I'll have a weird long pause or something like that. Don't worry about those things. Understand that the work that you're doing now, that you fit into a specific block of time on your calendar, is at the worst a first draft. So there's a difference between doing something and not doing something at all. So in the case of my business, I need to promote the key ideas and concepts that we use in the consulting side to solve problems for clients. I've decided that I'm going to do that in 15-minute chunks because those 15-minute chunks come together to become longer programs. So I'll say my key ideas, concepts, share the ideas, give you some tips in 15 minutes on a single topic, but then I can take 2 or 3 of those topics and put them together as a tutorial down the line, which I might charge for. So you'll hear me periodically say, hey, if you like more information about this, we have a special report. Contact my office with your questions and we'll get you details about how you can get copies of that special report. This is by design. I want you to look at your career. I want you to look at the outputs you produce for your customers or you produce for an employer and see how you can use 5 to 15-minute chunks to get not the final product done, but to get a really good draft. So if you're writing reports at work, maybe you're an analyst and you do research and then you prepare a draft of the report, then you circulate the draft, and then based on the feedback of circulation, you finish the draft. Okay? If you try to do all that straight through, you're going to have conflicts because of the availability of others. You're going to have conflicts because you might be researching and then you're starting the draft and then you go back to the research. So that context switching. If you take 15 minutes to do the research, 15 minutes to write the draft, and then at the end of that, you decide whether the draft is adequate. If the draft is not adequate, you go back to the research because now you have an idea of what the gap is. You go back to the research, do your 15 minutes of research, go back and do 15 minutes of draft. Now, instead of jumping between things, you might be able to have a good objective to finish a certain amount of research, package that up, and then go off and do something else before you come back and take that research and finish it. So another tip is to have your processes broken out, but be able to dedicate a certain amount of time for each step of the process. Now, if this was a project that required an hour, so for example, one of my hobbies is actually doing mushrooms. So if I get the setup ready for plugging mushroom logs, I don't actually do mushrooms. I mean, I grow like oyster mushrooms and I grow turkey tail and chicken of the woods. I have to plug these logs. So we drill a hole in the log, and then we put these little plugs in the log, and then I got to wax over the hole in order for that log to be ready to inoculate and grow mushrooms. Well, once I get all the equipment out, it takes 5 or 10 minutes to get all the equipment out to set up the area I'm going to work with. I don't want to spend 15 minutes on plugging logs and then cleaning up the materials and finishing. I want to be able to spend a good 2 hours on plugging logs. So if I don't have the 15 minutes to get the materials out and get set up, I don't have the 2 hours to do the plugging. And so what I'll do is I'll actually put that on the calendar, understanding it's going to take 2 hours and 15 minutes. Actually, there's cleanup, so 2 hours and 30 minutes. And I block out that time. I set everything up once. I plug a certain number of logs that feels like I've got a good amount of work done. And then at the end, I clean up and I'm done. So you want to look at your activities and map them out on paper. Now, we talk about network diagrams. We talk about flow charts. You hardly see that in anybody's environment except for those people who are highly efficient and successful at what they do. It could be a single page of paper that says, set up your stuff. Now, in the mushroom logs, what I'll do is I'll put all my mushroom log material, all my mushroom production materials in one spot. I might get a cardboard box, put all my, so I have an old crock pot that I use to heat up the wax. I have a certain drill bits. I have certain, like a rubber hammer. And I put all that in the same box so that now my setup is a little bit faster. So it's about optimization. So you want to have a process for what you do. You want to have a clear picture of what the output should be for that time invested. And then you want to basically do optimization in order to make that setup at least the same amount of time each time. So because I used to go out and plug like 5 mushroom logs and then clean up and go away. But I found that it was more efficient to plug maybe 20 logs at a time. And if I didn't have 20 logs to plug, and of course these logs have a certain time frame from when they're cut fresh to when you can finish plugging them. If I didn't have all these materials together at the right time, I would just roll the logs in the woods and let them rot. Because if I'm going to sit down to plug 5 logs, I'm actually using as much time to set up as I am using to plug the logs. Doesn't make any sense. It's good to have 5 logs plugged, but if I'm trying to produce these things in an efficient manner, then unless I'm just chilling out and just relaxing and having a good time, but if I'm trying to plug these things in an efficient manner, it doesn't make any sense to spend 15 minutes setting up, 30 minutes plugging logs, and then 15 minutes shutting down. Unless all I have to do that activity is an hour. Look at the outputs of the activity. Look at the inputs of the activity. You want to make sure your outputs are significantly greater than your inputs. So one of the things we talk about inside strategic relations is how to improve your influence, how to create more outputs, and how to overall manage that communication. So now if you have a 1 page that describes an activity and you're going to do that activity for somebody, you can then say with good accuracy, how long will it take to do the activity? That creates influence in your field. So I work with an HVAC company. One of my rental properties, the outside unit has failed. What I like about this company is that when they come to do the investigation, so the initial assessment of the job, they tell me, hey, look, I'm going to take 30 minutes and I'm going to look at these 5 things. And then I'll get back with you. So they give me an expectation of time it'll take for them to do the work. Then they do the work and then they report back. Now, at that point, it's a decision point. They could go off and do something else because the unit doesn't need additional service, or they can describe to me what the additional service is needed. Each stage of the activity, the investigation or the assessment, the actual repair, the follow-up on the repair, it's all mapped out on a calendar. Now, they're calling a dispatcher, and the dispatcher's taking notes on this so that they can follow up with the dispatcher, so that basically the technician can move on to the next job site. But it really depends on what you're doing, how you structure that out. Now, one of the biggest successes that I have with clients, especially if they're running a business that has $1 million gross or better, is what are your core processes? What are the activities that generate the most revenue, that generate the most value? Map those things out. You end up with a standard operating procedure. In fact, this is not unusual for households too. I've met individuals who one of the spouses have mapped out the common chores. They've mapped out the annual activities that are necessary, and they put them on a calendar. So what's one of the things you're going to do every year? Well, it's going to be seasonal preparation. So in the fall, after all the leaves have fallen, you're going to have leaves raked up. You might be doing composting. You might have the gutters cleaned. There's like a checklist. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll basically have a handyman that comes by 3 or 4 times a year, executes the items on the checklist, and then their household just runs like clockwork. I've seen moms who will have a checklist for what is needed in the car before they go on a long trip. Do you think that might help doing more long trips? Do you think it might help if you had a checklist of the things you need to have with you when you work on a particular activity? I'm advocating that you structure an environment for doing the job that you want to do. And I don't care if you only have one computer. It's okay if you have one computer, but you bring out a rolling cart that has the specific items associated with the activity you're going to do in the computer. Again, because the social media, because YouTube, because all these platforms are designed to suck you in so that they can monetize your attention, how do you suck yourself into the projects that are important to you and monetize your own attention? That's really what this is about. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. Like I said, most of my podcasts are 15 minutes plus or minus 5 minutes. I'm going to stick to that because I've got other activities that I've already planned and will be doing. And this is how you achieve much more. This is how you gain influence, by communicating how long it's going to take to do something and actually being able to stick to it. This is how you get results. If you have any questions about what we've covered today or anything else we've covered in the hundreds of podcast episodes I've produced over the last couple of years, visit us at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. I'm sure if you search for that, you'll find it, but you can go to that website, go to the contact page, send me a fax, send me a letter with your questions, because you can be more productive. You can get better results. You can resist the distractions, and you can get the results that you're looking for by transforming business relationships into profits guaranteed. The first relationship you're going to work on, though, is your relationship with the activities around you, because if you're like me and you're easily distracted, you want to make sure that you at least got the important things done first. Thanks for listening. Again, I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. See you next time.